Welcome to another New England Metal Jackets video. Here we have a 14.5 inch upper receiver built specific to our customers' requests. Starting off with the Aero Precision Ar15 Od green upper receiver, also utilizing a 13.5 inch Geissele's MK4 Mlok handguard, along with the Rosco manufacturing 14.5 inch 223 Wylde barrel. As you can see here in the video, what we're doing is we are lapping the upper receiver for the customer. During the process of lapping, I check every once in a while and make sure that the lapping grit is in place and hasn't moved to an area where it's no longer useful. So that's what we were doing there, checking to make sure that the compound was where it needs to be. Just finishing up another check of where that lapping material is moved to and relocating it back to where I need it. As we check and make sure that it's where it's at, we also look to see if the surface is being lapped and where we need to have a little bit more work done, or if we're good to move on to our next phase. Here we're just taking a good thorough look, gonna wipe it down and check to see how that surface looks. Here's a look at the finished product of that lapped upper receiver. After I finished with the lapping process, I then cleaned the upper receiver real thoroughly to make sure that I get all the gritty, sandy material out from the threads for the barrel nut and from within side of the upper receiver itself. Here we're just finishing up the process, and we're going to take a look at the final lapped upper receiver, all clean, and if it's satisfactory, we are going to move on to the next phase of this build. Here's our Aero Precision sticker that came with the upper receiver. And we are going to take the upper receiver and place it on our Midwest Industries upper receiver reaction rod. Here we're unboxing our Rosco manufacturing 14.5 inch barrel, 223 Wylde chambering. It's a very sexy looking barrel by Rosco manufacturing. Now we're going to take that wonderful Rosco barrel and we are going to put it up into this Aero Precision upper receiver. Using a little Mobile One synthetic grease, we are lubing up the shoulder for the barrel along with the barrel nut threads on the upper receiver. Now we got that cinched in there. We're going to clean off a little bit of the excess that's around the edges that got squished out while pushing the barrel into the upper receiver. We're going to utilize a little bit of that excess, and we are going to put it inside the Geissele's barrel nut to help aid with lubricating the threads going on to the upper receiver. Going on hand tight right here, and then we are going to use the barrel nut wrench, not supplied by Geissele's manufacturing in their handguards, and we are going to torque this sucker to 60 foot-pounds. For this build, I tightened the barrel nut to torque specs 2 times, loosened it 2 times, and then on the 3rd time did not loosen it, and that's where it stayed. Here's a quick look of the upper with the barrel attached in the barrel nut and the handguard in the background. The next step in this build here, we are dimpling the barrel for the gas block set screws that hold the gas block in place. We're utilizing a SLR Rifleworks gas block dimple jig. From the factory, the Rosco barrel does have one dimple in the barrel for the gas block. We were able to enhance that dimple and then add a second one to the proper spacing of the gas block that's going to be used. Here we're moving on from drilling the first dimple over to the second spot to make the second dimple into the barrel. Now that we removed the tool after doing the dimples, we are going to give it a quick clean to get rid of any of the metal shavings from the drilling process. Now we're going to take a look at those clean dimples. This build was fun and unique because the customer chose to go with the SuperlativeArms piston kit instead of the standard direct impingement gas system that you see on most AR-15s. Here we're going to slide the gas block onto the barrel. We're going to secure it down with the set screws, but we aren't going to tighten it all the way per the directions. Now that the set screws are in place, we are going to take the tool out of the vise momentarily so that we can rotate our upper receiver and work on the top end of the gas block. Here we're removing the one end of the gas block so that we can slide the piston in through the gas block and all the way up into the upper receiver. In the process of doing this, I had discovered that the Cerakote on the upper receiver had made the tolerance tight for the piston, so we had to go ahead and get in there with a file to file away just a little bit of that Cerakote material to give us enough room so that the piston will pass through there freely. After a few minutes of the filing, we go back and we check with the piston to see if we've made progress, and it only took really a little bit of filing and the piston fit just the way it should. Now that we know that the piston fits in the upper receiver, we're going to go ahead and install a bushing that is provided by the SuperlativeArms kit that gets hammered into the inside of the upper receiver. This helps to maintain a guide for the piston through the upper receiver. Here, if you look real close, you can see the bushing in where the gas tube or piston would be. Now that we've completed that task, we can go ahead and install the piston into the gas block, up into the upper receiver. Now we're just going to apply some rock set ceramic thread locker to the set screws of the gas block. Here we're getting those set screws cinched down, and then we're going to give it a quick wipe clean of any excess thread locker that is left. Here we're getting ready to install the optional return spring for the piston or plunger. We have to remove the piston, and then this optional spring slides over the entire piston and then sits at that collar right inside of the gas block itself. Here we're just going to add a little bit of gun oil to lubricate the components so that they just have a little bit of juice to help keep them moving. With the SuperlativeArms piston kit, you have to get a bolt along with firing pin and cam pin. Here we are running the Patriot Ordnance factory roller cam pin. For the setup, we are running a LBE Unlimited Bolt firing pin and retaining pin. Here, we're going to use the Real Avid bench block so that we can remove the ejector from the bolt. This nifty tool allows you to compress the spring so that you can hammer out the retaining roll pin from the bolt. Here we're removing the ejector from the bolt, and we're going to show you the bolt with the ejector removed. Here's a look at the completed bolt carrier group getting ready for doing some headspace checking. Here we're taking the minimum headspace gauge or go gauge to see if the bolt will close on it. If it does, that part of the test is a pass, and it does close on it. Now we are going to go with the maximum gauge or the no-go gauge. And with this test, the bolt carrier group should not go to full battery. If it does, you have a headspace issue. If it doesn't, you're good to continue. In this case, it doesn't close all the way. Just giving it one more time, double checking to make sure that it actually doesn't close and getting a better look at that process. Now we're going to move on to installing the handguard onto this upper receiver. As we can see here, it's a pretty snug fit getting the handguard sliding over the barrel nut, but that helps to ensure that the handguard's going to stay in place once the screws are tightened down. Now that we have the handguard slid all the way onto the barrel nut, we can insert the handguard screws into the bottom of the handguard and tighten them down. Now that the upper is finished, we can take it to the range. I had put a muzzle device on it because the customer has his own that he's going to be placing on it once the upper is in his possession. Here is a look at the very first shot going through this upper receiver. As you can see here, we had a good ejection pattern, and now we're going to move on to the next shot through the upper receiver, still maintaining that good ejection pattern, and we're going to fire a few more shots through this to check the functionality and make sure everything cycles and operates the way that it should. The range test and test firing went according to plan, and everything functioned the way it should. Once we returned from the range, we gave the upper receiver a good solid cleaning before shipping out to the customer. Here is a final look of the completed upper receiver built for our customer. One last look before we end this. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Please like our content, subscribe to our channels. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as well. Happy shooting. Stay safe.